Hi, this is Daniela Wolf with Bestie Life, the podcast, and this is your community to support you through the little and not so little events that make up your day-to-day life. From the I've got this moments to the I just can't moments. We are here to empower all women to find and develop the skills they need to find peace, balance, and the bliss in their busy. Through solo episodes as well as interviews with amazing women who share their journey and their story and how it works for you. I hope you find the inspirations to make you laugh, think, as well as maybe rethink what you thought you knew, and connect as we realize that we are all living similar ups and downs and don't have to do it alone. So excited for you to hear this episode, and thanks so much for joining me today. Hi, this is Daniela with Bestie Life, the podcast, and today I am so excited for you to meet money coach Hanna Bier. She works with ambitious women from around the world to recreate their relationship with money from the inside out and step into a world of financial overflow. She is the founder of Money Bliss and author of the new book, Wealth from Within. She has led tens of thousands of private and group sessions to really help answer the question, is it possible to create wealth without compromising your health, wellness, and happiness? And can you actually create abundant lives while living a life of joy? And the answer is yes. And so I can't wait for Hanna to share more of her story and dive into those answers. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Daniela. I'm so excited.
So I would love for you to share a little bit more about your journey in becoming a money coach and kind of what things you went through.
Yeah, it is one of the big plot twists in my life. I didn't start out as a money coach. I actually went to school to study international fashion management. And then while I was in university, I felt like a train had hit me. I was dealing with chronic fatigue and anxiety disorder. I was very deeply, deeply depressed. And so I could hardly even get to my classes or get out the door to get groceries. And so in an attempt to try and fix what I felt was wrong with me, I found all these emotional healing tools and life coaching and spirituality. And before I knew it, instead of pursuing my degree, I had started my first business. And I was an emotional healing coach. And so I was healing, my clients were healing, we were all feeling so much better, so much stronger, just making moves in our lives. I started to move around. I moved to Indonesia and then Amsterdam and then later on London. And over time, I noticed some side effects with my clients. They kept recording that they were making all this money and getting windfalls of money and starting businesses that were doing really well. And at first, I didn't think that there was a connection to the emotional healing work. But over time, I got asked more and more to help people with their relationship with money and, give them some money healing. So the word kind of got out. And so people came and said, you help my friend with this. I need help with my money too. And at first I said, I don't, that's not really what we worked on. But at some point it just kind of became undeniable that financial abundance was one of the powerful side effects from this emotional healing work that I was doing.
Yeah. And I love the fact that, this came about so organically. Mine was very similar, where people really gravitate to you when you're doing something that has that alignment for yourself and everybody else. And I always love to talk about money as a form of self-care, especially how you think about money, the energy surrounding money. We think of money from what we buy with it versus the fact that it itself is its own currency, has its own energy.
Yeah, the way it all started out was that we started trading, right? You would give me some pumpkins and I would give you some meat in exchange. And so I like to think of money as this way of expressing appreciation for one another. It's me saying, thank you so much for bringing this into my life. And you thank me and you appreciate the work that I did. And so it's about contributing positively to society together. But in our modern day trade and in our modern day societies, we often really lose sight of that. And so I really love just the bigger spiritual meaning that money holds. It's a way for us to discover gifts and talents. So it's a way for us to improve life of the community as a whole. It's a way for us to contribute. It's a way for us to do something meaningful with our time. And in return, ideally, we would be amazing receivers of love, and love in the form of money would flow abundantly into our lives and help us live really comfortably and really abundantly.
Yeah, I love that you haven't talked much about how much because I think, again, that's an area so many people focus on, is just how many dollar signs, how many zeros, those types of things. And you're talking about this connection and this community through money, right?
Yeah, and so when you're tapped into the right mindset with money and when you're in a really beautiful energy with money, you know that you've got access to infinite amounts of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then this whole mindset of need more, it's not enough, need more, it's not enough, it just kind of naturally falls away because this is kind of the mindset that most of us are in, right? And so I always say that the not enough, the more always kind of energetically translates to not enough and then helps us manifest more not enoughness. And so even some of my millionaire clients, even some of my clients who come from very wealthy families who are doing extremely well in their businesses, they often come to me and they still say, but money is my biggest stressor. But money is the thing that makes me feel like I'm not enough. But money is the thing that makes me feel ashamed. Money is the thing that makes me really worry about my future. And so what I've discovered is that more money really isn't a solution. It would just be like pouring more water into a bucket with holes in it. But when you have the right mindset with money and when you're in the flow with money, then you not only have access to infinite amounts of money, but also the money that you currently have is more than enough. And then you can create more and more and more without it feeling not enough, but instead it feels like a beautiful, healthy, organic overflow.
Yeah, I love that you talk about that, because so many times people think, I just need more money and then I'll be happy. Where, I guess they've even done scientific studies that prove there's a certain threshold that once you go over, I think it used to be like $75,000 US, but I'm not sure if that's still the number. But after that, your happiness can actually go down depending on your mindset about money and how you think about it.
That actually makes sense to me, right? Because then oftentimes our lifestyle changes and we enter new groups of people. And then again, we feel like the broke person in the room. And again, we feel like we have to keep up with the Joneses and we're not dressed well enough, or we're not interesting enough, or we don't go to the cool vacation places that everybody else goes to. And so it's this constant, race to try and be good enough, to try and belong, to try and, make it in the world. And one of the ways that we do measure our progress as human beings is, how financially productive we are. But the way that I like to look at money is from the perspective that your life is supposed to make you happy. Like, what if the whole purpose of your life was to make you happy? And what if we set up your money so that it makes you happy every single moment of your day? An example for me is that I'm very introverted, I'm very sensitive. I love having lots of money. I love knowing that I can work because I want to, not because I have to. I love knowing that when I feel, I haven't had a depressive episode in years, but if something were to happen, I could just take as much time off as I needed. I'm also very intuitive. So oftentimes my soul tells me, move to a new country or start a new business or go do this, like really dramatic changes. And I really like that I've got all the financial resources to follow the calling of my soul in the moment. And so my finances are set up in a very specific way because it's supposed to make me feel free. It's supposed to make me feel secure. It's supposed to make me feel like anything is possible. Like I can go and be the full range of me. Like I can really be congruent with who I am. And so this is the question that many of us never really ask ourselves. We think that there is a one perfect or a one right recipe to do money, but we never really think, how am I wired? And how can I set up my finances so that it feels like this most amazing feeling of relief, but also feels like it opens all doors for me in life that I really want to walk through?
Right. So money is not defining you. Money is there to support the version of you that you want to put out into the world.
Right. It can either be an obstacle. I feel like many of us, if not all of us, have definitely experienced what it feels like when money is the obstacle, when money is the big no, when money is the door that keeps being slammed in our faces, when money is the reason why we can't, or why we have to, the reason why we feel limited. And the case that I want to make is that money is really supposed to be what you just described, the wind in my sails. Money is supposed to be the thing that takes me places, that pulls me more deeply into life, that allows me to experience everything that I can be, that, it's the fuel for me to live a really good life. And again, one of the core teachings from my line of work is that the more you become an amazing receiver of love, the more you'll also be an amazing receiver of money. So your capacity to receive and have love, to have all of your needs met, all of your desires fulfilled, to be so perfectly in the flow in life is directly mirrored in how your money is flowing. So in a way, we're doing really deep emotional healing work, but you get paid for it. Like the side
Right.
effects are so cool. You get a ton of money just, through the work of getting to discover who you truly are, how you
Mhm.
want to live, and giving yourself the gift of experiencing that.
So if someone's listening right now, they love the idea of this, it sounds good, but they're staring at a pile of bills. They're not sure how to even start because obviously from a practical standpoint, things need to get paid. There's certain obligations we all have. How do you start that transformation without losing your house and all that type of stuff?
Absolutely. It's a slow, gradual process.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that I like to do it with my clients is we make a change and then we acclimate, and we make a change and then we acclimate. So if you work with me or if you do any of my programs or if you read my book, you'll see that there are no quantum leaps. There are
Mm-hmm.
no overnight successes. Closest thing to an overnight success is that many of my clients like double their income, quadruple their income within the first 2 weeks or the first month. Like that's very common. And yet, the really big money wins, I like to implement them over time so that our nervous systems really get used to the fact that it's just money, it's just
Mm-hmm.
numbers. I can receive any amount and I can still be me. My life doesn't necessarily have to change if there's aspects of it that I don't want to change. It doesn't mean anything about me. I'm really just playing the game of money for the joy of getting to experience what different numbers of money in my bank account feel
Mm-hmm.
like. So the first thing I want to invite everybody to think about is we can do it slowly, we can do it gradually, we can help you become more comfortable with larger and larger amounts of money over time so that your inner self won't freak out and just be really comfortable with any amount of money, really.
So your book then, Wealth from Within, can you share just a little bit more about that as far as what somebody will take away from that?
Yeah, so it's supposed to be just the opposite of the way that most of us learn to relate to money. It's a little summary of my Money Bliss method. Um, and it's supposed to show you just a different approach to money and what's possible when you walk a different path with money. It was born from my own realization that it felt like I could fix any area of my life. Like if
Mm-hmm.
my relationships weren't working well, or if my health wasn't working well, like I could read a book, I could ask a friend, I could take a course. But for me, money always felt like the one thing that I just couldn't figure out. Like, of course, I did the Dave Ramsey and I had a budget and knew all those things, but my emotional hooks around money were just always making it feel just blah. And
Mm-hmm.
so the case that I'm trying to make with Wealth from Within is that money can be blissful. Money can be fun. Money can be the easiest part of your life. Money can be like the stuffy that lets you sleep deeply at night. Money can be the thing that you can always rely on. If life ever throws you something unexpected, you've got this wonderful thing called money to help you through. And so if anything about this conversation today resonates, and if you think, oh my God, yes, like I don't know a single person who's really happy and relaxed with their money and life's too short to constantly feel stressed, then maybe read the book and maybe it'll help you discover an approach with money and a way forward with money that feels much better than what you've been experiencing so far.
I love that. And it definitely ties into, like you said, that appreciation, that gratitude, which I also always love to talk about as an underutilized form of self-care. All these different practices from money to mindset to gratitude. I think they're so accessible that it almost seems too simple, which is why I think sometimes we don't. But I always love to ask, what would you say then are some of the things that you're the most grateful for?
That I'm the most grateful for.
Yeah.
I have to say, I have a little daughter. She just turned 4.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my biggest life accomplishments was how present I'm able to be with her. And it really ties back to me, to my situation with money, because I still remember in my early 20s, back when I was so worried, so stressed about money, I was constantly thinking about it. I was consumed by it. I like my entire body was so tense. I kept getting massages and they did nothing for me because like 5 minutes later, I was all tense again. None of the yoga was able to relax me. I was just this really tightly wound ball of anxiety. And the more my money improved and the more I really saw the numbers back it up, and the more I had the physical proof that I am a great moneymaker, I can make great financial choices, my future is set up, I can breathe, I can relax, it's fine, I can just be myself, I can enjoy my work, I can enjoy my time with the people I love, then I just became so much more present. I didn't need to meditate so much all the time anymore because, it turns out having money is really good for my nervous system. And
Mhm.
now I just really love that I can just enjoy this time with my daughter. At this point, I don't know whether I want to have more kids. If it's just her, then that's
Mhm.
perfect. And then I can just totally and completely savor this time, drop her off at nursery, pick her up early, have afternoons cackling in the living room. And it's such a blessing. And I feel like when I first started this money healing work, I thought of money as something quite shallow. I
Right.
thought, oh yeah, it's about like big cars and big houses and like making it and being successful and showing everybody what you're capable of. But now to me, it's this thing that helps me focus on the things that truly matter. And the more I create money in my world, the more I can, give my time and my attention to the things that, that it's like life isn't passing me by as much anymore, is pretty much how I'm
Mhm.
feeling, and has alleviated a lot of my anxiety.
Yeah, no, those are great. And you mentioned in there a little bit that I forgot to ask about was like the judgment when it comes to money. Cause I think so many times it's easy to judge when we don't have money, but also I think there's a judgment when we have money that we judge ourselves or we assume other people are judging us. And so how do you help with that mindset piece of money, not just from scarcity, but also from abundance?
Right. So many of my clients are similar personalities to me,
Mm-hmm.
as it happens, right? Many of my clients are really sensitive, are really loving people. Um, they just have a really big heart, are very creative, and they have this exact same fear of like, what if I make a ton of money? What if people find out just how wealthy I am? What if I really become as successful as I want to be? And
Mm-hmm.
what if that will change my relationships? What if that will mean that people will look at me differently? And so the thing that I always say is nobody has to know. I am half American, I'm half German, and I currently live in Germany. It's so refreshing. There are so
Mm-hmm.
many wealthy people around here, but nobody drives big cars. I'm like 5 minutes from the Mercedes-Benz factory and 15 minutes from the Porsche one. Everybody drives Mercedes and Porsche here, and those who don't drive BMWs. So everybody drives like really nice cars, but nobody's really showing off. Like you don't see any new Louis Vuitton bags walking down the street. And before living in Germany, I lived in London. It was definitely different in London. Everybody wanted to show what they had. And so I just really love the cultural difference here of, wealthy people don't show what they have and it doesn't really increase their status here. If
Mm-hmm.
somebody were to walk down the street with an expensive handbag, most people wouldn't even recognize it probably. And those who wouldn't necessarily think positively of that person. And so this type of anonymity in Germany I really like. I like that I just look like a normal person. Nobody knows what I do for a living. Nobody
Right.
knows how much money I have on my bank account. And that kind of goes back to this idea that my life is here to make me happy. Like my money
Mm-hmm.
is just there to sit and make me happy. My money is just there to be this idea of freedom and possibility. I can choose to use it. I can choose to not use it. And so I think in the process of working through some of our money blocks, we also develop a really strong sense of self, where we learn who we are. We learn to hold on to ourselves throughout the different seasons of life, and we learn to stand really strong in ourselves and not, worry so much about appearances and be able to set better boundaries. So for anybody who is worried, how about you just make 1 million, let it sit on your bank account and don't tell anybody about it? And then maybe
Yeah.
5 years later, you want to do something with it or you don't. But what I'm pretty much saying is it's nobody's business but your own. Your journey with money is just meant to make you happy, and you can design it the way you want to. If you're like me, you don't have to tell anybody. I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever shared how much money I have or even my income with anybody because I just feel like it's besides the point. And like
Right.
I'll share my clients' success stories and share some snippets about how I like to do my money and what feels good for me. But I just kind of feel like it's beside the point because
Mm-hmm.
for some people, the amount of money that I have and earn might be incredible. For some people, they'll look at me and be like, it's not that much, right? Like there's so many billionaires on the planet now. They would look at my finances and be like, it's not that much. Yeah, it's just about finding our own sense of freedom and bliss with money.
Yeah, because it really is all relative, and we each come into it with our own perspective as well as our own thoughts and needs as far as what money is going to do for us and how it's going to make us feel. So how can people work with you, Hanna? How can they find you? How can they start to get into their own money bliss?
Yeah, my client favorite program that is so popular right now is called Money Bliss. So everything that I share today, we work through in that program. We clear all of your money and success blocks. We design your ideal financial reality and implement it together. And I just love the word Money Bliss. We help you become blissfully happy and make a ton of money in the process. And it's so beautiful. So you can find out more about working with me on my website, hannabier.com. That's HANNABIER.com. And also learn more about my book and download some freebies there.
Awesome. And those links will be live in the show notes below. So thank you so much, Hanna, for joining us today and sharing this perspective about money. I think especially as we're in this new year, everyone's looking ahead of what they want to achieve. And I think being able to take money out of that equation is going to help them feel even more happy and success.
That's my wish. Thanks so much for having me, Daniela.
Thanks so much again for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know any questions or comments that you have. Also, if you can please leave an Apple 5-star review so that this episode can be shared with more women. There's 2 quotes that I love. Alone we may be strong, but together we are stronger, as well as when women support each other, incredible things happen. So let's be stronger and incredible together, as well as maybe just have some fun along the way. Thanks so much and talk to you soon. Bye.